we don't think that racial issues have anything to do with us, and I'm speaking particularly to white audiences. We think we like to pretend that we don't see color, that color is something that people who've been racialized as minorities need to deal with, because we think of ourselves as being innocent. And yet the truth is not only do we have hidden unconscious bias within ourselves, those biases come out in our interactions with others. They play out in the policies and procedures of the institutions that we belong to, and they also are systemic. So from the moment we're born, we're conditioned to see whiteness with advantage and to see blackness, and I'm using the word generically, to see others as disadvantaged, and that's something they have to overcome. My advantage is something that came to me, and therefore I can relax into it. Not too long ago, I was approached by an organization outside of Monroe County, asking for some training and advice and some support in terms of getting communities of color to not only be a part of the organization. They were looking for employees of color, but also once people came to the organization, how do they keep them and invite them into dialogues around diversity and inclusion. They were having a very difficult time. First of all, when people came to the organization, they did not tend to stay, and then those who did were reluctant to participate. So in further dialogue with the caller, I said to her that it was not necessary to begin dialogues on race and racial justice by having diversity in the group. You could start just by the people who were there. There's a lot that white people can learn through our history, through reading, through dialogue, and through conversations that can be very helpful to creating an atmosphere where communities of color might be more relaxed and willing to participate, since they know that you've done your homework. And there was silence on the other end of the line and a long pause. And I did not hear from that organization since that time. And I think they were just frightened, and they were a little bit overwhelmed by the responsibility that they had to own in terms of doing this work. I was disappointed because I felt that I had handled the situation in a very gentle and kind and open manner, which I thought would be an opening for them to think, well, gee, maybe there are some things that we can do. So I was disappointed. My second story happened just today. I do some facilitating for a group that has been meeting approximately 3 years. And this group includes communities of color and representatives of police departments around Monroe County. Generally, it's the chiefs who attend. Today, I was facilitating, and some very direct questions were asked of the police chiefs, and I thought that the police chiefs responded really, really well. They were thoughtful in their responses. They waited to hear people finish their stories and ask their questions, and then they thoughtfully responded. And I thought to myself, wow, this is great. We're making headway. We're really listening to each other. So I said to myself, my first thought was, at the conclusion of the meeting, I was going to personally thank each of the police chiefs or their representatives for being so responsive. And not taking offense. And then I thought to myself, why would I just be appreciating the police chiefs or their representatives, all of whom were white, and not have the same generosity toward the people of color who were asking pointed questions, but they were asking those questions with appreciation and understanding of the hard work that police are charged with. So I realized that I was practicing racism by simply acknowledging one group without the other. So after that first thought and my aha moment, I realized that it would be appropriate for me to acknowledge each of the people individually who were part of that dialogue, thanking them, and that there was no distinction by race as to how people engaged in the conversation and what they had to say. So it was a learning on my own part, and I was grateful that I came to that understanding and acted on it. Equity does not mean to me treating everybody equally. I think in terms of values, our values are such that we want to treat everybody with respect, with dignity. We want to treat people the way we want to be treated. But I see equity as understanding the strengths and the needs of each person in the group or in the organization. Because if somebody has skills and strengths in a certain area, you might want to tap them to train other new people or people who don't have those skills. At the same time, when somebody comes new to an organization and you do a needs assessment, we do a needs assessment in realizing that everybody comes with different levels of skills, understandings, and awareness. So treating people equity would mean giving them the skills, the understanding, the supports they need in order to be successful on the job. And that's different for each person. Well, if we're really serious about creating a community in which all people are treated with dignity and respect, then we have to be willing to take the time to build relationships. We live in a very fast-paced society. People want you to say things in a 3-minute spot that will answer everybody's questions. And relationships don't work that way. Relationships take time, energy, and investment. But it's through the relationships that we build the kind of rapport with each other that we can call each other out, so that people can feel comfortable enough to me to say, Steve, when you said this, when you did this, when you didn't do it, I felt that there was some injustice there, and I'd like to tell you about it. And that means that I need to be in a space where I can hear, listen fully, and not put emphasis on my intent. I need to hear what the impact was, so I can apologize with complete sincerity, say I promise to do better. Well, we put an awful lot of pressure on communities of color who have been discriminated since the beginning of our country's history. We want them to tell us, and we have to do our own homework. We have to understand why communities of color find it hard to trust white people, why our overtures toward them are met with resistance, because we don't have a good follow-through. I would also say that communities of color notice that we don't treat each other very well. So if they see the way we treat one another, they get anxious about how we might be treating them.